Hello and welcome back, and it's time for another 5 versus 5. You know, if you don't know this already, by the way, it's fairly self-explanatory, but today I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why you should buy the brand new QNAP TVS-h1288X and 5 reasons why you might not want to. Now, I've already talked about this device at length here on the channel. We've done Plex testing, we've done hardware unboxing, we've done performance testing, and we've still got the Thunderbolt testing to go. But right now, a number of you look at this device knocking around at $2,000 to $2.5 grand and going, that is a lot of money. Why on earth would I buy that? So hopefully for you guys, rather than my long hardware review, today's video is going to be hopefully a bit punchier and give you just the highlights. Reason number 1 that you might want to buy this device, I'm just going to call it the 88X, by the way, that name's huge. Reason number 1 will be that processor. It is a joke how good it is. It is the Intel Xeon W1250, a 6-core graphically embedded processor. It's got an insane clock speed, insane capabilities, and we pushed the hell out of this device. And again, thanks to ZFS really keeping things squeaky clean, this device really did do the job, and a lot of that in terms of Plex Media Server. It is still currently the best performing desktop Plex Media Server NAS I've ever featured here on the channel. That CPU does so much. The deployment of VMs, the number of cameras we were knocking around with in QVR, just the sheer level of productivity and performance this brings, and handling of all the different storage areas inside, mean that this device is certainly one of the most powerful, and a big part of that is to do with that processor, arriving with ECC memory as well, up to 128 gigs supported by that processor with 16 by default. That CPU has opened the doors to a huge amount of productivity and a huge number of network interfaces on the outside being supported, as well as improved performance on the inside. So reason number 1 being that CPU, cannot argue with that. Reason number 2 that you might want to get the 88X is the optional Thunderbolt 3. Now this is a big deal because QNAP have been the brand for Thunderbolt NAS. If you're someone that's looking to edit files, you know, over Thunderbolt for video editing, 4K, you know, all those sort of huge sizes there, but also you want the distribution, the backup, the multi-user access of NAS, Thunderbolt NAS over the last few years has really paid off for QNAP insofar as investing in new kind of technology. And although a couple of companies have tried to release Thunderbolt solutions, they've kind of withered and gone away, and QNAP still largely dominate this area of the marketplace. Now, because they largely, you know, let's face it, commercially own Thunderbolt NAS as a concept, just Google it and you'll see what I mean. It's really impressive that their latest generation, rather than arriving with Thunderbolt 3 by default, thereby anyone that wants the hardware inside this has to pay the extra cost of Thunderbolt 3, they've now kind of sourced it out to their own, and it is an official Thunderbolt card, allowing you to upgrade gradually. Now, a number of you that are buying a Thunderbolt system probably looked at that and gone, well, that's just annoying, I want to know how much it is. But I know a number of you, when you heard that QNAP were going down this road of optional Thunderbolt, it meant that a number of their systems were going to come down in price. And as more and more systems start to arrive with support of this card in one shape or form or another, it means that it allows a number of us who have either got non-Thunderbolt systems to make the jump, or vice versa, buy systems with Thunderbolt early doors, but remove it. It is desirable, and I do think optional Thunderbolt 3 connectivity is a big part of why this is interesting. Also, the idea, because of the multiple PCIe lanes, you can add multiple cards. So there's 2 connections on a card, so 2 users can connect to this, you know, an obscenely powerful storage device and have great performance each at the same time. And adding more cards adds more connected users, and because of the multiple tier storage system of this device, performance won't be bottlenecked so easily with the right media. So again, really impressed with the optional upgradability of that card. Reason number 3 that you might want to go for this device, and that is that not only does it arrive with that optional Thunderbolt, but by default it arrives with 2 10GBE ports. We've removed the card inside there because, one, turning it around is a nightmare, and I will touch on why later on, but it arrives with a card inside with dedicated 2 10GBE ports and its own controller for 10GBE on board, the Aquantia, The result is that all of the hard work of 10 GBE is not having to be done by the system, freeing up a lot more of those hardware resources to more important things, because the card can get the job done for you. And with 2 ports by default, that means you've already got 20 GBE off the bat, and then later on you can start adding those Thunderbolts. Now, this card also isn't the only network interfaces, and although I like that it's 2 times 10G, and that is copper 10G by the way, 10G base T, it also has 4 2.5 GBE ports as well. So on the back there are 4 10 GBE 2.5 GBE connections, which can be link aggregated up to another potential 10 GBE. So by default, this arrives with a combined bandwidth potential of 30 gigabits per second. So again, that's 3,000 megs, and that optional upgradability. And again, it is a pricey box, but once you price up the CPU, price up the connections, price up the storage tiers, price up what it can and will deliver, it actually becomes a little bit more understandable. Now, reason number 4, I've already just touched on it, is the tiers. This system arrives with 3 dedicated storage tiers that can be upgraded as well. So we've got our traditional SATA storage bays here at the bottom, which can, if you have a look inside, allow the installation of hard drives. So again, these are 3.5 inch. We've got the ones in here for testing. These are WD Red Pro series drives. So again, all of these here give a combined performance that really will blow your socks off. But on top of that, if you have those fully populated, you've also got SATA SSD tiers. So down here we've got drives that can give you 250 to 60 megs per second each, and then you have SATA SSDs, WD Red SA500s in this test sample. So again, these won't be included when you buy it, and these SSDs will give you again 500 megs per second on average, which can be used for caching or as their own dedicated storage pool. So you can RAID them together in a RAID 5 or a RAID 0 if you like, and get a huge amount of performance from this tier, either combined with the hard drive tiers with caching or independently as their own pools. And remember, you've got those external connections as well. On top of that, on the inside, you have got 2 NVMe M2 bays as well, and those are PCIe Gen 3 times 4, so again 4,000 megabytes per second throughput each, and they too can be used for caching to bestow that fast performance towards the hard drives, or for a raw storage. You have 3 different potential fast acting storage pools. On top of that, if you like, you can install an upgrade card like this one. This is one of the QM2 cards, and this is a 4-port NVMe upgrade card. It's a PCIe Gen 3 times 8, so 8,000 meg throughput. This can go inside there and create a 4th tier if you choose. Now again, these are optional extras. I shouldn't really mention them inside this video because these are just some of the upgrades that you can go down the road. But what I'm saying is the tiers on this device are hugely impressive, and I've always been a fan of this QNAP chassis with its 3-tier storage system. This is technically the 3rd generation of their tiered storage chassis, and it's better than ever. Reason number 5, final reason there why you might get the 88X, I've already said it, ZFS. This arrives with QUTS Hero, their ZFS version of their software, services and graphical user interface, and ZFS is just A1. We've known it for years. There's been lots of comparisons between ZFS, EXT4 and BTRFS on different platforms, and of course this does support EXT4. It has to be said that ZFS, although resource hungry, is the best file system out there, from triple parity RAID to inline data compression, data coalescing. Then you've got deduplication as well. You've got the removal of the volume layer. So traditionally, when you write data to a NAS, you've got the hard drives here, which then need to have to be formed into a storage pool. Then you have to create volumes on top of them, and then your data and containers of applications go in there, which can add another layer, in fact. What happens with ZFS is it removes the volume layer and you write straight onto the storage pool, and therefore improves performance and vastly improves RAID build times, RAID rebuilding, RAID resilvering with the reintroduction of drives. ZFS is a hugely beneficial file system, and the fact that it's included in this is a big step forward, and it's probably one of those 5 reasons Why I like this so much, ZFS is definitely one of the best QNAP general whole range improvements. It's really pleasant to see, and we're seeing ZFS starting to arrive on more modest systems as well, such as the 9738X. That knocks around for about 850 to 900 quid, and that's got an AMD SoC Ryzen embedded processor, that one that we've talked about a lot. That has ZFS as well. So it's nice to see ZFS appearing more and more on QNAP systems, and especially one with the tiered storage in the CPU that can take advantage of it. But it's not all good, and there's a number of reasons why a number of you might not like to buy this. So let's flip to the other side and talk about the 5 reasons that you might not want to get this device. Reason number 1, and I can't really be angry at QNAP for this, but I'm going to be anyway. It's got an HDMI port, which is fantastic, and I love an HDMI out NAS. It's 1.4B. It's 30 frames per second, 4K. It's lesser. All of their new devices, even ones with far more modest processors like the Celeron, they have got HDMI 2.0, 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, of course, if you're watching 4K movies, that is a boon. But if you're using the surveillance program, 4K 60 frames per second allows you to have a much better control deck to look at all those different camera feeds at the highest resolution possible. And if you are running a standalone surveillance system with this, so KVM, keyboard, video, mouse, connected to this, as well as the network access and the internet access, 4K 60 frames per second is quite desirable in that format. The same goes if you're going to create a standalone PC out of this with virtualization, taking advantage of this system's support of graphics cards. It's even got a separate cable off the PSU for graphics cards. That HDMI out being limited is really disappointing. And yes, a GPU card should have its own dedicated HDMI, which you can take advantage of. But the 1.4B lower HDMI out on this is a bit disappointing. But once again, I can't really be angry at QNAP for that, because it is the fault. I say fault. It is a CPU restriction. That processor is the one that can't go higher. So even if QNAP had lumped on an HDMI 2.0, the CPU couldn't have utilised it anyway. So it's on there. It's not really QNAP's fault, but I'm still angry about it. Reason number 2 that you might not buy this device is the power consumption. It has a hell of a power footprint. Now, obviously, that is based on utilisation. You know, if you don't fully populate the device and you're not using it flat out, you're not going to use as much power. But there's no avoiding that this device's 550 watt PSU does present the system the ability to just go take as much as you like, and maybe not be as efficient as you might like it to be. So yes, 550 watt PSU is a heads or tails scenario here, depending on how you use the device, and therefore it's not 550 watt constantly. But there's no avoiding the fact that this is a hungry device with multiple cooling systems internally and externally, and the range of ports on there that still need power. That CPU is quite a big one, with the majority of devices. I've seen a lot of 8 bays these days knocking around with 250 watt PSUs. That is a big jump. Obviously, a lot of it is there in case you need it for your GPU card or your 10G or whatever, but that's still a large PSU, and I know a number of you might be slightly put off by that. Reason number 3, you might not get this device, and again, a lot of these negative points are going to be contentious. It goes back to that 10 GBE connection, because it being on a card is useful, it has to be said. If it is on a separate card, it means there's a controller to take care of the 10 GBE, but it means you lose a PCIe slot. This device has 2 PCIe Gen 3x4 slots and 1 PCIe Gen 3x8 slot, and this card is in the ×8 slot. There's a slot that can give you 8,000 megs, and it has a card in it that theoretically can't give you more than 2,000 megs. What a waste. And it's one of the things that's really disappointing, because this has a lot of ports and connections. Let's turn it around a sec. I'm going to be careful because of the media inside. But look at this here. We have 4 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports here. We've got all of those PCIe lanes. We've got all of these fans. We've got 4 connections here of 2.5 GBE. What I'm saying is, I think a number of us would have preferred on-board 10 GBE like we've seen in the 72 series. And losing a 10G slot, losing a PCIe slot It's a little disappointing. Sorry, the panels are meant to be covered there, but I've been doing lots of testing, as you can see. But the result is losing that slot to the card means you can't use it for something else. And say you did want to take advantage of that upgrade card here to get all that great performance, the result still is that this card needs to go in that slot. So you'd have to remove the 10G to take advantage of a card like that. Yes, it's optional, but still, I would have preferred the 10G on board. Maybe lose all 4 of these and just stick 2 10s there and maybe pull back on something else. You know, there are options out there, and also that card being in that slot is a bit weird if you ask me. But that's reason number 3. Reason number 4 is, and this goes back to QTS Hero. Now, this is one that might change down the line, so it might be overly negative, but I do think it is worth mentioning right now at the time of publishing. QTS Hero isn't as featured right now in terms of applications as standard QTS and ext4, such as QVR Elite, their surveillance platform. I think, you know, does perform very, very well, and I think it definitely showed improved performance with the client applications, whether that was the hardware architecture inside or QVR Elite's tweaking. But it has less camera licenses, 2 by default, which is less than the current version of QVR Pro. The same goes for a number of the applications. In the QUTS app library, there are fewer applications than standard QTS, and I don't quite like that. I don't like the fact that some of the day-to-day apps aren't there. I know a number of you might argue, as QNAP surely would while watching this video, and if you are, hello, that, you know, a lot of those apps were more home, prosumer, SMB, and this is enterprise, but I would like to be able to choose between them, and it's clearly either a conscious choice by QNAP to remove those apps, or those apps aren't ZFS ready yet, which means they might change down the line. But still, nevertheless, I find that the QUTS app library is missing maybe 20% of the applications, and I wish they were there, but that might change down the line. And finally, reason number 5 that you might not want to get this device, and this is more range specific. This is technically the 8-bay device. This is 8 hard drives, but it obviously has 4 SSD bays and 2 M2 NVMe bays. There is a 16-bay model. There's 16 hard drive bays, 4 SATA SSD bays, and 2 NVMe bays inside. And those are huge. And that price point indicates it at $2,000 to $2,500. grand. But all the other devices that I would argue in this product series and the AIM, such as the 82 series, the 1282, 882, and 682, and the 472XT, 672XT, and 872XT were available in smaller models. There was a 4-bay, a 6-bay, and then an 8-bay and bigger devices. This is a good device, and it is powerful, but I think a number of us will balk when we hear we've got to enter it at this $2,000 8-bay device. QNAP have shown they can be flexible, you know, optional Thunderbolt there, but I would have liked to have seen this architecture in a 4 and a 6-bay device, and you can't tell me it's not possible because they've clearly done it twice in previous generations. That, although the 7.2 isn't strictly in the same generation as this, it's a different product line, blah blah blah. But still, I would have liked to have seen this in a 4 and 6-bay equivalent, because this only being in an 8 and a 12-bay puts it way too high up. And I do think if they went to the trouble of producing Thunderbolt 4 and 6 bays previously, they can do it again. And this system, if it was a 4 or 6 bay, would be absolutely perfect. At maybe the 12 or 1600 price mark respectively, that would be an absolute killer. And its absence to me is notable as a failure for me in this device family. But that has been my 5v5 reasons to and to not to buy this device. If you are interested in learning more, there's a link to the full hardware review in the description. Click like if you've enjoyed the video, click subscribe to learn more, and of course visit the guys at span.com to buy your NAS today. It is a plug, but they know what they're doing. They're some of the best in the biz. Give them a look up. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.